In the early days of warfare, battles were personal. Soldiers faced each other across fields and fought hand to hand. Swords, shields, and spears were the tools of the trade. Victory went to the side with the most courage, strength, and discipline. Ancient armies relied on formations to protect themselves and overpower the enemy. The Romans, for example, were masters of organization and discipline. Their legions marched in tight formations, their shields forming a nearly impenetrable wall. Greek hoplites, heavily armored infantry, fought in phalanx formations. These formations, while effective, were slow and cumbersome. Battles were often decided by brute force, with the larger army usually prevailing. Ancient battles were bloody and brutal affairs. Casualties could be enormous, with thousands slain in a single engagement. The outcome of these battles shaped empires and changed the course of history. The clash of swords on ancient battlefields echoed through the ages, shaping the world we know today. The invention of gunpowder marked a turning point in the history of warfare. This seemingly simple mixture of sulfur, charcoal, and potassium nitrate would go on to revolutionize the way battles were fought and won. This groundbreaking technology, originating in China during the Tang dynasty, slowly made its way westward through trade routes like the Silk Road. Chinese alchemists initially used gunpowder for medicinal purposes and fireworks, but its potential as a weapon was soon realized. Gunpowder first appeared in Europe in the 13th century, ushering in a new era of warfare. European armies quickly recognized its potential, and it wasn't long before gunpowder weapons began to change the dynamics of battlefields across the continent. Cannons, though initially crude and unreliable, emerged as powerful weapons. These early cannons were capable of firing heavy projectiles that could cause significant damage, even though their accuracy and range were limited. These early cannons could blast holes in castle walls, fortifications that had stood for centuries. The once impenetrable strongholds of medieval Europe were now vulnerable to the destructive power of gunpowder artillery. The introduction of firearms, while gradual, had a profound impact. Early firearms like the hand cannon and the arquebus began to replace traditional weapons, leading to new military tactics and strategies. Battles were no longer decided solely by hand-to-hand combat. The presence of firearms meant that soldiers could engage the enemy from a distance, reducing the need for close-quarters fighting. The range and power of gunpowder weapons forced armies to adapt. Traditional battle formations and tactics had to be rethought, as the effectiveness of muskets and cannons changed the dynamics of warfare. Soldiers armed with muskets and arquebuses could strike from a distance, challenging the dominance of heavily armored knights. The age of chivalry was giving way to a new era where firepower reigned supreme. The battlefield became a more dangerous place, with casualties mounting. The destructive power of gunpowder weapons meant that battles were bloodier and more lethal than ever before. The evolution of firearms continued, with muskets becoming more accurate and reliable. Innovations in gunpowder technology and weapon design led to more effective and deadly firearms. The age of gunpowder had arrived, forever changing the face of warfare. The traditional methods of combat were being replaced by new strategies that leveraged the power of gunpowder weapons. The roar of cannons and the crackle of muskets would become the new sounds of battle. The echoes of these powerful weapons would resonate through history, marking the dawn of a new era in military conflict. The Industrial Revolution, beginning in the 18th century, unleashed a wave of technological innovation that transformed warfare. Factories churned out weapons and ammunition on an unprecedented scale. The mass production of weapons made armies larger and more lethal. The steam engine, a key invention of the Industrial Revolution, powered warships and trains. Ironclad warships, heavily armored and armed with powerful guns, replaced wooden ships. Railroads enabled the rapid movement of troops and supplies, revolutionizing logistics. The telegraph allowed for near-instantaneous communication across vast distances, enhancing command and control. The Industrial Revolution also led to the development of new weapons, such as the machine gun and the submarine. These technological advancements shifted the balance of power. Nations with industrial might gained a significant advantage on the battlefield. The era of industrial warfare had arrived, characterized by mass production, technological innovation, and increasingly destructive conflicts. Section 4, World War I, a new kind of conflict. World War I, which erupted in 1914, was a conflict unlike any seen before. It was a war that would change the course of history, involving many of the world's great powers and drawing in nations from every corner of the globe. It was a global war, with nations from around the world drawn into the conflict. The alliances and rivalries that had been building for decades finally erupted into a full-scale war. The Industrial Revolution had transformed warfare, creating a terrifying new era of industrialized killing. Factories that once produced goods for everyday life were now churning out weapons of unprecedented destructive power. Millions of soldiers faced each other across a network of trenches that stretched for hundreds of miles. These trenches became the defining feature of the war, a symbol of the brutal and stagnant nature of the conflict. Machine guns, artillery, and poison gas turned the battlefield into a hellish landscape. The introduction of these new weapons meant that soldiers were exposed to unprecedented levels of danger and suffering. The horrors of trench warfare left an indelible mark on a generation. The constant threat of death, the relentless bombardments, and the psychological toll of living in such conditions were devastating. New technologies, such as tanks and airplanes, emerged on the battlefield. These innovations were attempts to break the deadlock and gain an advantage over the enemy. Tanks, heavily armored vehicles, were designed to break the stalemate of trench warfare. They could cross difficult terrain and withstand machine gun fire, offering a new way to attack entrenched positions. Airplanes, initially used for reconnaissance, evolved into weapons of war. They began to engage in aerial dogfights and bomb enemy positions, adding a new dimension to the conflict. World War I was a conflict of attrition, with both sides locked in a bloody stalemate for years. The war became a test of endurance, with each side trying to outlast the other. The war had a profound impact on the world, leading to millions of casualties and reshaping the political landscape of Europe. The devastation left behind was immense, and the consequences of the war would be felt for generations to come. Section 5. Trench Warfare. A grueling stalemate. The Western Front of World War I was dominated by trench warfare, a brutal and agonizing form of combat. Armies dug deep into the ground, creating elaborate systems of trenches connected by communication trenches. These trenches offered some protection from enemy fire, but created a new set of horrors. Life in the trenches was a miserable existence. Soldiers endured constant bombardment, disease, and the ever-present threat of enemy attack. Rats, lice, and trenchfoot were constant companions. Attacks often began with massive artillery barrages, turning the battlefield into a churned-up wasteland. Soldiers would then go over the top, charging across no man's land into a hail of machine gun fire. These assaults often resulted in heavy casualties for minimal gains. The machine gun, a weapon of terrifying efficiency, came to symbolize the stalemate of trench warfare. The trenches became a symbol of the futility and brutality of war, a testament to the horrors unleashed by industrial warfare. Section 6. World War II, the rise of air power. World War II, which began in 1939, was a global conflict that engulfed much of the world. It involved more than 100 million people from over 30 countries, making it one of the most widespread wars in history. The war was marked by significant events and battles that shaped the course of the 20th century. It was a war of unprecedented scale and destruction, made even more devastating by the technological advancements since World War I. Cities were reduced to rubble, and millions of lives were lost. The sheer scale of the conflict and the devastation it caused were unlike anything the world had seen before. Air power played a decisive role in World War II, transforming the nature of warfare. The skies became a new battleground where control of the air could determine the outcome of ground and naval battles. The ability to strike from the air added a new dimension to military strategy. Bombers such as the American B-17 Flying Fortress and the British Avro Lancaster could deliver massive payloads of bombs, targeting enemy cities and industrial centers. These bombers were capable of flying long distances and carrying heavy bomb loads, making them a formidable force in the war. Fighter aircraft, like the American P-51 Mustang and the German Messerschmitt Bf-109, engaged in dogfights for air superiority. These agile and fast planes were crucial in protecting bombers and engaging enemy fighters. The pilots who flew these planes were often seen as the knights of the sky, engaging in deadly duels high above the ground. The Battle of Britain, a pivotal air campaign fought in 1940, demonstrated the importance of air power. The skies over Britain became the arena for a fierce battle between the Royal Air Force and the German Luftwaffe. The outcome of this battle would determine the fate of Britain and, ultimately, the course of the war. The Royal Air Force, though outnumbered, successfully defended Britain against the German Luftwaffe. The bravery and skill of the RAF pilots, flying iconic aircraft like the Spitfire and Hurricane, played a crucial role in repelling the German attacks. Their success in the Battle of Britain was a turning point in the war. Air power also played a crucial role in the Pacific theater, with aircraft carriers becoming vital naval assets. These floating airbases allowed for the projection of air power across vast ocean distances, changing the nature of naval warfare. Battles such as Midway and the Coral Sea highlighted the strategic importance of aircraft carriers. The development of the atomic bomb, a weapon of unimaginable power, marked a terrifying new chapter in the history of warfare. The Manhattan Project, a secret research and development project, led to the creation of the first nuclear weapons. The potential for destruction that these weapons held was unprecedented. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945 ushered in the atomic age, a time of both promise and peril. The immediate devastation caused by the bombs was immense, leading to the end of World War II. However, the long-term implications of nuclear weapons would shape global politics and security for decades to come.